What video or recording is perfectly innocent, but becomes terrifying when you look into the story behind it? My mom and I recently watched one of those 2020th shows. And they were talking about a woman who went out drinking one night and was never seen again. She had gone back to one guy's apartment, but hotel footage showed her leave shortly after arriving. And the guy in the apartment swore he didn't do anything to her. But they kept interviewing this one guy, who was the last guy to see her alive. They stopped at a gas station, and he claims that she started talking to another guy, got in his car and left. He played the whole "if I had only known, I wouldn't have let her go" act, with tears and everything. Well, there's footage of him at his job a couple days later, and the footage is super generic. He has a cooler on a rolling cart, and he's putting it in a freezer. He worked for a food production company. When the police interviewed his boss, they asked to see all of her footage, and she obliged. When they got to that part of the footage, him putting the cooler in the freezer, she told police to stop. She said that those coolers were used to store granola bars, and there was zero reason for those bars to be put in the freezer. The girl's body was in there. He took it out back and burned basically everything in a barrel down the alley a couple days later. But it was before the police had seen the footage, and he had bleached his entire van before police could search it. That was a local one for me. And super beeped up. She was drinking underage at a club in downtown Denver and was totally wasted. Either had been way overserved or had been drugged. She got kicked out of the club and wasn't allowed to go get her jacket, purse, or phone. Her friends had it all, so she accepted a ride home from someone she didn't know. The rest is history. The dating game. The concept appeared innocent enough. A woman chooses a bachelor out of the 3 available contestants and they go on a date. However, the game in 1978 turned dark when serial killer Rodney Alcala was nominated to be a contestant and actually won the game. The contestant refused to go out with him on the date because she thought he was actually creepy afterwards. She dodged a bullet. This surveillance video of Timothy Pitson. It just looks like he and his mother are checking into a hotel, but in reality it is shortly before his mother kills herself and leaves behind a note saying Timothy is safe but will never be found. He is still missing. In the note, Fry Pitson apologized for the mess she had created, and explained that Timothy would never be found, but was safe with people who would care for him. Squints suspiciously. The TV show The Willis Family that had 2 seasons on TLC. The dad was super controlling of his 12 kids and wife and just gave off creepy vibes. I was shocked though to find out that he had been raping his own daughters for years, with the oldest saying that molestation started when she was 3. All 12 children were homeschooled and did dance and wrestling, but only with each other. They were so isolated from other people. He was also strict about his daughters saving themselves for marriage even though he was raping them. There's a clip from the show of him discussing all the kids building houses on his property so his future grandchildren would be close by. It's like he was trying to set up his next victims for when his daughters grew up. The worst part is the mom knew for a while but didn't do anything about it. It was a family friend that ended up reaching out to authorities, which led to his arrest and sentence of 40 years. It's super creepy to see clips of the show knowing what was happening behind closed doors. Considering the hidden in plain sight sexual abuse by Josh Duggar, you'd think TLC would be more careful when they do shows of families in the quiverful cult. People who have those extremely skewed, controlling views of sex are rarely up to any good. TLC doesn't give a single speep. They still film and promote the Duggars. They only kept some of them off the air for a while because of backlash and now it's faded. The James Bulger video. I'm on mobile and I'm a bit lazy. but it's a seemingly innocent video of a 2-year-old boy James holding the hand of an older child. James was tortured and murdered by two 10-year-old kids who led him away from his mother for a split second at a shopping center. The song Anne-Marie sings in All Dogs Go to Heaven about wanting a loving home. While recording, the voice actress, Judith Barcy, kept crying. Her home life was awful. Her father was abusive to both her and her mother and would often threaten to kill or hurt them. Judith died before the movie came out. She and her mother were killed by her father and then he killed himself. She was 10. My dad couldn't watch that without crying with rage. As a kid it didn't make sense. Because then he'd turn off the TV and just hug me till my ribs creaked. What a creepily wholesome metaphor, hugged me till my ribs creaked. What about the video that was on Tosh? Oh, where there were two girls and the dad tied them in a playful way to the bed. But it was really like a pedo tutorial on how to do this to kids so the pedo could do what they wanted. Tosh said on the show it was creepy and the guy's whole YouTube channel was weird. A few months later the FBI or something investigated it and it turned out the guy was a pedo abusing the girls and exploiting them on his kid's YouTube channel. That video looked creepy innocent until you find out the real story. Reminds me of that picture of two girls on their knees eating whipped cream off an older guy's knees. The girls are smiling, probably thinking they're playing some goofy game, when obviously in reality the guy is grooming them to normalize that behavior. I hope those girls are okay. This is David and Louise Turpin renewing their wedding vows in Vegas with an Elvis impersonator. 3 years later, their 17-year-old daughter escaped from the house that she had been locked up and abused in along with her 12 siblings, and called the police. When authorities arrived they believed her to be around 13 years old, as she was so malnourished. Their eldest daughter, who was 29 years old, weighed just 82 pounds, around 30 kilograms. For years the parents had imprisoned, beaten and strangled their children, allowing them to eat just once per day and shower just once per year. Either David or Louise's Facebook profile was public and had a lot of pictures of the kids, who all had the same speepty haircut as their dad. It was speeped up. David Alan Turpin and Louise Anna Turpin met when David was 17 and Louise was 10, and eloped in 1985 in Petersburg, Virginia, which angered Louise's father, who was a pastor. Yikes. Ian Huntley. Guy murdered two young girls and gave an interview to the news while they were missing. One day I saw a news report on a woman's body dropped in a lake. The police were still looking for the body. They interviewed a man who said that could have been someone's mother. A few hours later they find out the body was that man's mother. That's sad, speep man. I'm from Czech Republic and on YouTube, there's a video of a Who Wants to Be a Millionaire contender Viktor Kalivoda. He's a pretty smart guy and performs better than well. However, later he's become one of the most famous mass murderers in the history of our country. That wham video always gives me goosebumps. There was a picture of a 16 to 17-year-old girl floating around very briefly years back. It was just an innocent picture of some teen posing for a photo. Look deeper into it and it turns out the girl was from a rich family and had a drug problem. She got into an argument with her dad, stormed out and stole his car, did a bunch of coke, then crashed into a bridge going hella fast. She was killed instantly. As sad as that is, the beeped up part is why the photo was being passed around. Somehow the photos taken as the scene of the crash found their way online and horrifically cruel people decided to send out fake memorial emails to this girl's family. Opening the email seemed innocent enough. A heartfelt subject about how terrible this was. A photo of this girl before she died. But scroll any further and there were the pictures of her corpse with messages taunting her loved ones. I found one of these messages and her body was not in one piece. It was mangled. Seeing your daughter's corpse is one thing. Seeing it in that state is something else. But to have people playing with it online for no other reason than to hurt you is unthinkable. Porsche girl. Nikki Katsaris. The 2004 tsunami videos. People having fun on gorgeous day. Enjoying the now very wide beach not knowing the wave of death coming towards them. When the 2011 tsunami hit, I was in high school, taking mostly computer classes. I can't tell you how many videos I watched of CCTV, live steaming, etc. Videos of cars being washed away. Buildings full of people being inundated with water. Even one video where you see people rushing up a hill. An elderly couple can't keep up and honestly it seems as if they just give up. I'm fairly certain they get washed away. That day was tragic. This video of former Officer Craig Pyre giving safety advice that was created in response to the murder of Cara Knott. Pyre had murdered Knott by luring her to an isolated area just off the freeway. Never let them take you to a secondary location. Carmen Miranda's last performance. Carmen Miranda, the famous singer and dancer of the 1940s, performed on the Jimmy Durante Show on August 4, 1955. At the end of her performance she briefly dropped to her knee but popped back up afterwards. She later died of a massive heart attack that same night. Edit. Happens at 24:02. My fault for not putting it earlier. Wow. You could tell her dance partner knew something was wrong and stopped the music to let her catch her breath. This interview about a murder with Stephen McDaniel, in which her neighbor ended up being the one who kidnapped and dismembered her. It's horrifying looking back and seeing his tics where they bring her up. And even when they eventually find her body and he goes loco. This video of a Russian influencer. In her birthday party at a swimming pool she had the idea of pouring dry ice in the water for the visual effect. 3 people died intoxicated because of all the carbon dioxide. News. Holy hell, and it was an indoor pool as well. Poor guys/gals had no chance. Also, that is a really small room for an indoor pool. No wonder they were overwhelmed by the CO2. There's nowhere for the gases to go. I don't know about innocent. But if you cut out the ending, the video leading up to Bud Dwyer's suicide seems so normal. Just another guy on TV getting harassed by reporters over the latest controversy. If it had cut there, you could air it on the evening news and nobody would know someone died less than 20 seconds later. Just disturbing. For anyone daring enough to look it up. Don't watch it if you have a weak stomach. So much blood. I don't know if you are aware, but there are actually 2 videos from different vantage points. The first has a pretty horrible amount of blood. The second is, I'm sure, the one you are talking about, where it's like I can't believe that much blood can even fit in a human body. These teens found a suitcase in Seattle by the sea while filming a TikTok, only to discover later the suitcase contained 2 bodies. There was a celebrity in the UK called Jimmy Savile who presented many BBC programs in the 1970s, especially ones with a younger audience. He did a campaign for seatbelt awareness and was a patron for many charities for the vulnerable. He was probably the most loved celebrity for decades. After his death he was revealed as the country's worst child sex offender who used his fame and proximity to children to abuse them. Any picture or TV footage of him near kids was probably shot just before or after he'd assaulted someone. Actress Melissa Benoist was on Jimmy Fallon in 2016. She told a story about a time she fell and tore up half her face and one of her eyes. She made jokes about it, and no one really thought about it. Last year she revealed that one of her exes was very violent when they were together. She revealed that the story she told on Jimmy Fallon was a cover-up story. The real story is that her husband at the time had thrown an iPhone in her face. It's so creepy knowing that said ex was almost definitely Blake Jenner, who she starred in Glee with. I can't bear to rewatch any of the season his character is in. Creeps me out too much. That set must have been hell for her too. What with Lea Michele also hating her. This video of a band performing in a bar in Thailand. Minutes later, the entire place catches fire and more than 60 people are dead. Also, the band's name is Burn and the song they're singing is Linkin Park's In the End. Hi. Jack Neal. That's some Final Destination speep. Back in the 90s, there was a popular hit by a band named Soul Asylum called Runaway Train. Younger folks may have heard it on classic rock stations. It's a soft power ballad with slightly melancholy lyrics, which was pretty typical for the 90s. The video is not typical. I can never not cry when I watch it. It features the pictures of over 30 missing children. There were several versions for different regions and countries. The Australian version features missing backpackers who were later found to be murdered by a serial killer. 26 children were found because of this song, but murders were also solved because of it, while at least one runaway was found and forced back into abuse. At least one child in the video is still unaccounted for. The comment section is heartbreaking, with the top replies from family and friends of those featured. It's a complex tangle of optimism and bleakness, lurking beneath an innocuous emo song. Edit. Age-processed photos of Thomas Dean Gibson, the last child in the video. He is still unaccounted for. I hate that this is so far down. Last year for the 25th anniversary FML. When did I get so old? They remade the video to help find a new generation of kids. It made me cry then. It makes me cry now. But it's still worth watching. Tommy Cooper death on stage. People was thinking he was still acting when he collapsed on the ground dead for a heart attack. Tommy was a brilliant performer who was deliberately amateurish and had things go wrong as part of his routine. So when he died, many thought it was part of the show. Dr. Nassar's sports medicine videos. He's one of the docs for USA Gymnastics and has had a ton of videos on his website of him demonstrating various sports med techniques and treatments. It looks professional on the surface. The thing is, some of his techniques are totally made up. Some techniques he demonstrated on video: he would digitally penetrate finger young girls in the vagina and anus. He performed these techniques on hundreds of young girls under the guise of it being for their health, and sometimes directly in front of their parents. Sometimes while aroused. Watch Athlete A on Netflix if you want the story on this scumbag. He's imprisoned in a facility specifically for inmates that can't be with general population because of the nature of their crime. Guys that would be brutalized by other inmates. I've been to one of those facilities as a contractor. Cops hate those inmates. They're the worst of the worst. Guys that would be brutalized by other inmates. I recall reading that at first they tried to put him in a normal federal prison. And the very moment he went with the general populace, he got beaten up. Maybe not that innocent to begin with, but extra creepy knowing the truth. A video of an African grey parrot named Bud saying "Don't f***ing shoot." He witnessed his owner Martin Durham being murdered by his wife. IRC Bud also mimicked both sides of verbal fights, alternating between a male and female voice. I believe the parrot testified in court. The wife was convicted, but did not testify. Sorry to get your hopes up. He was, however, a useful witness during the investigation. I believe the parrot testified in court. Amen. I so wanted this to be the case. But she was convicted without the parrot on the stand. Anyone know of any cases where a non-human has testified?